My coworker stole my campaign and claimed it as her own, so I exposed her lies and took back my career. I remember the exact moment when I realized something was wrong. The advertising agency where I had poured years of sweat and creativity was supposed to be my sanctuary, a place where ideas blossomed and collaboration fueled success. But that day, sitting at my desk under the harsh fluorescent lights, I stumbled upon an email thread that stopped me cold. My latest project, a bold, innovative campaign for one of our biggest clients, had been quietly presented to the client by Clara, a colleague I barely trusted but always tolerated. She wasn't just a coworker. She was someone with deep connections inside the client's company. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just providing updates. But then I saw the slides. The visuals, the slogans, even the entire concept mirror my work down to the last detail. Shock turned to disbelief and then to a cold, burning anger. How could she steal months of my effort? The countless late nights, sketching concepts, the endless revisions, the desperate calls to the art department. All of it ripped away and claimed as her own. Clara was the type who smiled sweetly in meetings, but worked like a shark beneath the surface. And now, with her ties inside the client's ranks, she had leveraged the opportunity to present herself as the mastermind behind my project. I felt betrayed, but I knew reacting emotionally would only play into her hands. I needed a plan, one that was precise and unassailable. The agency was filled with politics, and Clara's connections made her untouchable on the surface. But no one could deny the raw evidence if I could collect it. So, I began gathering everything. Original sketches, rough drafts, emails to and from my team, timestamps on files stored deep in our shared servers. I quietly spoke to a few trusted colleagues who confirmed they had witnessed me leading the project. Their support was cautious but genuine. They too had noticed Clara's growing opportunism, but feared the fallout of speaking up. In parallel, I started documenting the timeline. Who did what, when, and how the work evolved. It was painstaking, but necessary. I couldn't just accuse Clara of theft without solid proof. But the bigger challenge was the client. Clara's inside connections had given her a foot in the door, but I was determined to show the truth. Not just through accusations, but by demonstrating clearly who had done the real work. The game had changed, and I was ready to play. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope. Every move I made had to be careful, calculated. Clara wasn't just a clever thief. She was a master manipulator with allies in unexpected places. I couldn't afford to raise alarms too soon, or she'd cover her tracks before I had a chance to expose her. I spent hours combing through folders on the company server, pulling out early drafts and iterations of the campaign. The timestamps on these files were irrefutable proof that I had developed the ideas long before Clara ever stepped in. I printed out emails from our correspondence with the art and marketing teams where my name was explicitly mentioned as the project lead. But documents alone wouldn't be enough. I needed voices, witnesses who could confirm the truth without fear of retaliation. Slowly, I reached out to a few colleagues during lunch breaks or after hours. Some were hesitant, worried about damaging their own careers by crossing Clara. Others were sympathetic but cautious. One of them, Jenna from the design team, confided in me that Clara often swooped in at the last minute, taking credit for others' work. She's out of way with words, Jenna said quietly, and she knows how to charm the right people. But when it comes down to actual creativity, that's yours, not hers. Armed with this support, I began assembling a comprehensive dossier. Original files, emails, witness statements, and a clear timeline of how the project evolved under my direction. At the same time, I quietly contacted the client's marketing department, carefully choosing a neutral but influential contact. I shared a version of the dossier, framed as a request for an internal review to ensure the integrity of the campaign. I didn't accuse Clara outright, but highlighted discrepancies and inconsistencies in the project presentation. To counter Clara's narrative, I began preparing my own presentation, a direct, transparent walkthrough of the campaign's development stages. I would not only prove my authorship, but also highlight how Clara's version lacked the depth and strategic insight I had painstakingly developed. The stakes were high. If Clara caught wind of my plan too soon, she could spin the story in her favor or even sabotage my position in the agency. But with every piece of evidence gathered and every ally quietly secured, my confidence grew. I was no longer the quiet creator in the corner. I was a force ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The moment I launched my counter-presentation to the client was nerve-wracking. I had spent days refining every slide, ensuring it told a clear, undeniable story, who had truly shaped the campaign. I wasn't just showing a project, I was unveiling the truth behind the scenes, layer by layer. I scheduled a discreet meeting with the client's marketing team, careful to avoid drawing attention from Clara or our agency's higher-ups. As I walked into the room, a mix of anxiety and determination swirled inside me. This was my chance to reclaim my work, my reputation, and my career. During the presentation, I started by showing the earliest drafts, rough sketches, raw ideas, brainstorming notes, emphasizing how the campaign evolved through collaborative efforts but always under my leadership. I highlighted key decisions, changes, and strategic pivots that only I had proposed and documented in emails and memos. Then I contrasted those with Clara's version, the polished but superficial presentation she had taken to the client. It lacked depth, creativity, and a coherent strategy. The discrepancies were clear, and I could see the doubt flicker in the eyes of the client representatives. I also shared confidential messages from our internal correspondence, proving that Clara had been out of the loop for weeks before suddenly showing up to claim credit. The client was visibly taken aback. What truly sealed the deal was the support I'd gathered from colleagues who spoke up in follow-up calls and emails, affirming my role as the true architect of the campaign. The client's marketing director later told me that the evidence was overwhelming. Back at the agency, the atmosphere shifted. Clara's confident smiles began to fade as whispers of the investigation spread. She found herself isolated, her usual allies hesitant to defend her when confronted with facts. Soon, clients started questioning the legitimacy of Clara's work. Contracts were put on hold and budgets frozen. The agency's management couldn't ignore the damage to their reputation. Clara was called into meetings where she faced tough questions and warnings. I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, vindication, but also a lingering sadness. This battle was necessary, but it had come at a cost: trust broken, relationships strained, and a workplace forever changed. Still, I knew I had done the right thing. By standing firm and proving the truth, I was not only saving my career, but protecting the integrity of the work itself. As Clara's grip on the client loosened, the ripple effects were immediate and undeniable. Contracts that once flowed smoothly began to stall. Clients, upon learning of the allegations, grew wary, questioning the agency's internal integrity. The repercussions hit Clara hardest. Her credibility, once seemingly unshakable thanks to her connections, began to crumble. The agency's leadership convened emergency meetings, grappling with damage control. Rumors circulated that Clara's bonus payments were withheld pending investigation, and whispers spread that she was on thin ice. Yet, despite the mounting pressure, Clara remained outwardly defiant, as if sheer bravado could shield her from the truth. I continued to build my case, quietly but steadily. I coordinated with the client's marketing team and the journalists I had briefed, ensuring the facts remained front and center. The story wasn't just about one stolen campaign. It was a glaring example of the toxic culture festering beneath the agency's polished surface. Meanwhile, within the agency walls, my own position became precarious. Some colleagues, fearful of backlash, distanced themselves. Others admired my courage but worried about the fallout. The once familiar office environment morphed into a minefield of whispered conversations and guarded glances. Despite the chaos, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. This wasn't merely a personal vendetta. It was a fight for justice, for recognition of honest work in an industry where credit was often stolen or diluted. Finally, the agency called Clara into a formal disciplinary hearing. Evidence was presented. The documents, testimonies, emails, all painting a damning picture. Clara's protests grew desperate, but the facts were unassailable. The verdict was swift. Clara was terminated, her reputation tarnished beyond repair. Clients pulled back their business, and the agency pledged reforms to safeguard intellectual property and transparency moving forward. As I watched Clara's fall, I didn't feel triumph. Instead, I felt a solemn resolve to keep pushing forward, to rebuild trust, and to prove that integrity could still prevail in a cutthroat world. The day Clara was officially let go, the atmosphere in the agency was thick with tension and a bittersweet relief. I remember sitting at my desk, watching as her belongings were packed up in silence. No dramatic confrontations, just a quiet end to a chapter that had consumed so much of my energy and peace. Yet, even with her departure, the aftermath lingered. The agency's clients were wary, some even reconsidering their partnerships. Contracts were delayed, and the agency's financial stability wavered. I could see the toll the scandal had taken on everyone, not just Clara. But amid the chaos, I found my own path forward. The clients I had worked closely with reached out, expressing support and interest in collaborating directly with me or with teams I was involved in. My reputation for dedication and creativity had survived the storm and even grown stronger. I began working on new campaigns, fueled not just by professional drive, but by a personal mission to restore trust. Each project was an opportunity to demonstrate that true innovation comes from transparency and respect for the creative process. There were moments of doubt, of course. Sometimes I wondered if the fight was worth the emotional toll. But then I'd remind myself why I stood up, not just for myself, but for anyone whose work might be stolen or overlooked. Slowly, the agency started to recover. Leadership introduced new policies to prevent intellectual theft and promote open communication. Workshops on ethics became mandatory, and a culture of accountability began to take root. Looking back, I realized that what I lost was not just a colleague, but an illusion that merit alone would protect me. What I gained, however, was far more valuable: a deeper understanding of resilience, justice, and the true meaning of professional integrity. As the months rolled on, the agency's environment began to shift. The once toxic undercurrents slowly gave way to a more open and honest culture. I could see the difference not only in the meetings, but also in the way people interacted. More collaboration, less suspicion. My projects gained momentum. With renewed trust from clients, I was entrusted with bigger campaigns, and my ideas received the spotlight they deserved. It felt like a vindication, not just for my creativity, but for standing firm when it mattered most. Clara's shadow faded, but her actions left a lasting lesson. I became an advocate within the agency for protecting intellectual property, helping to develop clear guidelines and reporting mechanisms. It was important to me that no one else would face what I had endured. On a personal level, the experience changed me. I learned to balance passion with prudence, to trust cautiously but stand boldly when necessary. The scars of betrayal remained, but they fueled my drive rather than holding me back. There were moments when I still doubted, when the pressure mounted, or when whispers of old conflict surfaced. But each time, I reminded myself of the truth I had fought to uphold and the future I was building. One day, as I prepared for a major pitch to a new client, I caught my reflection in the glass, a woman transformed by adversity, unyielding yet hopeful. The journey was far from over, but I was ready for whatever lay ahead. The new client pitch was a pivotal moment. This campaign wasn't just another project. It was a testament to how far I had come. I had spent weeks crafting every detail, ensuring the presentation reflected not only creativity, but also transparency and collaboration, the very values I had fought to defend. Standing in the conference room, I felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but beneath it lay a steady confidence. The room was filled with decision-makers from a company I admired, and I knew that this pitch could open doors beyond anything I'd imagined a year ago. As I walked them through the strategy, visuals, and messaging, I made sure to highlight how our team's collective efforts shaped the campaign. I shared anecdotes about late-night brainstorming sessions, feedback loops, and the iterative process that honed our ideas. I wanted them to see the heart behind the work. Their reactions were encouraging. Questions were thoughtful, smiles genuine, and by the end, there was a palpable sense of excitement. When they expressed their interest in moving forward, relief washed over me, but so did pride. This wasn't just about winning a client. It was about proving that integrity and perseverance could lead to success in an industry too often overshadowed by shortcuts and silenced voices. Later that evening, as I celebrated with my small team, I reflected on the journey. The betrayal, the struggle, the fight for recognition, all had shaped not only my career, but my character. I realized then that true victory wasn't just about reclaiming stolen work. It was about building something better, stronger, and more authentic from the ground up. As my team and I celebrated our success, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. The road had been treacherous, filled with moments when giving up seemed easier. But the unwavering support of my colleagues, the clients who believed in my vision, and my own relentless determination had carried me through. In the weeks that followed, our campaign flourished. Social media buzzed with positive feedback, engagement metrics soared, and the client expressed their satisfaction openly. It was a stark contrast to the dark days when doubts and accusations loomed over me. Within the agency, I took on a new role mentoring younger creatives, sharing my story as a cautionary tale, but also as a beacon of hope. I urged them to protect their ideas, document their work meticulously, and stand firm when faced with injustice. Though Clara was gone, her shadow lingered as a reminder of what could happen when trust is broken. The agency embraced reforms, clearer policies on intellectual property, whistleblower protections, and transparency initiatives. It was a collective step forward, ensuring the painful lessons wouldn't be forgotten. On a personal level, I found balance again. Work was important, but so was self-care and relationships. I reconnected with old friends and allowed myself moments of joy beyond the office walls. The journey had transformed me, not just professionally, but as a person. I learned that integrity isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of true creativity and success. And as I looked ahead, I knew the story wasn't over. There would always be challenges, but now I had the strength and conviction to face them head on. The final chapter of this chapter in my life came quietly but powerfully. The agency, now more vigilant and united, began to regain its footing. Our clients returned with renewed confidence, impressed by the transparency and professionalism that now defined us. I was invited to speak at industry panels about intellectual property and ethics, a role I never expected but embraced wholeheartedly. Sharing my experience, I encouraged others to stand up for their work and foster environments where creativity could thrive without fear. Reflecting on the path from betrayal to redemption, I recognized the profound impact it had on me. The sting of stolen ideas and broken trust had fueled a determination that reshaped my career and personal values. Those scars remain. They serve as reminders of resilience rather than wounds. I have learned to navigate the complex dance of ambition and integrity, understanding that true success lies not only in accolades, but in the honor of one's work. As I prepare for the next big project, I do so with a clear heart and steady hands, ready to create, to inspire, and to lead with the lessons of the past as my guide. This story, though closed in one chapter, marks the beginning of a lifelong commitment to authenticity and justice in everything I do.